Today's video is brought to you by AlmostHeaven.com. Handcrafting at-home saunas since 1977. Want better sleep, less stress, and faster recovery? Now's the perfect time. Shop saunas, cold plunges, hybrids, and accessories. Use our exclusive code at checkout to save 5%. Link below.
Today's Path of Purpose alphabet, we've come to the letter Y, but not a Y in the road. This is all about yielding, which is a matter of patience. So this could be synonymous with patience, Bo. And why should we consider yielding in our everyday lives?
Dave, good morning. The very concept is definitely counterintuitive. As human beings, we are built to think of what's best for us. What can I get? What can I gain? What can I do that will capture the notice of those around us? In other words, we live self-centered lives. And if you think about this concept of yielding actually involves putting others' own best interests ahead of our own. Yielding is service. Just picture the pattern of traffic. We're driving down the road, we come to an intersection, and we run into a yield sign. Well, we, by first thought, want to challenge that yield and proceed along our route. But what so happens if a car is actually coming in front of us and we do not yield? Well, we end up causing a collision. And I think so goes life, is that when we try to force our own best interests, even in a situation where it is very clear that, hey, this is not about me, but rather this is about how I can help you, well, good things tend to happen because it involves dying to our own self-interest in the moment. Now, I'm not saying we should eat second crow, play second fiddle in every situation, but there are certainly matters of life where we are better off yielding to the best interest of others. Those people in life who consistently offer themselves as servants in the form of teaching, in the form of protecting, these are the people that gain the greatest satisfaction of life because they realize, hey, I'm not the only person on this earth. There are other people that have ideas, that have goals, that have interests. And if I can help someone get to where it is they want to go, inevitably I am going to eventually get where I want to go. A famous quote from a very heroic personal development guru. Matter of fact, it wasn't Tony Robbins, but it was someone that Tony Robbins followed very closely, said, if you help enough people get what they want, eventually you will get what you want. And this whole idea is based on the concept of yielding. You first, then me. Ultimately, we all get to where we want to go in life. So that's why I think this whole concept of yielding is so important for us to understand, because it's not natural. It's not intuitive. We never have to practice self-centeredness. That much is built into us. We really have to be thoughtful and stop and actually interact with people on their level and essentially practice empathy, where we attempt to understand what's important to another and then not only understand it, but actually do something about it, which is very different than simply sympathy, because sympathy would stop at, hey, okay, I understand that you're going through a tough spell. I'm sorry for you. Whereas empathy would be, oh, you're going through a tough step. How can I help you make that better? Let's do that. Let's take action. Because as we discussed last week, an idea without action is nothing more than a distraction.
I love this too. You said this before our call, that yielding is a process of exchanging the immediate for the more important. And just thinking about that brings calm to me. I don't know why, but hearing you say those words, it's like, okay, let me just pause for a moment.
Sure. And let me apply that just to our passion of Ironman racing. We know that we had an incredible performance from our Timex teammates this past weekend in Chattanooga. And Dave, when I saw the results, I immediately wanted to sign up for Ironman Louisville, which is in 2 weeks. And this is something that I originally planned on doing. But as we've also discussed, this whole thing called parenthood and being a dad, well, I way underestimated the time, the attention, the commitment that it would take. Now, there's no question in my mind that I could toe the line 2 weeks from Sunday and finish. And that would be the immediate gratification that comes with racing Ironman. I could do that. But as we've also discussed at this point in my triathlon career, the only reason I'm racing Ironman is to get to Kona. Well, are the chances of me getting to Kona as good as they are of me just showing up to race? Absolutely not. So I could trade the immediate, yes, and go race in 2 weeks. And I would have another Ironman under my belt. But that's not practical. I realized that this is a season where I poured myself into learning, even as bad as I am at being a dad, is that I'm learning how to do this thing called being a dad. Now, triathlon is going to return, and I'm chomping at the bit to get back out there. But right now, I am trying to yield to what's more important rather than react to what is urgent. And in my case, the urgent is to go race Ironman Louisville, where the important is to learn through trial and error, more error than trial, how to be a dad. And that's where I am right now. I am yielding to my interest of triathlon in order to focus on what's important, and that's being a dad.
Other words that you were talking about in association with yielding is a matter of taking extra care and insightfulness. There's a level of insightfulness that a person, I guess, experiences in the process of yielding. And it could just be an evaluation of your current situation and having an extra moment or an extra breath to evaluate and find the best course of action to take.
So let's take two different perspectives on this concept. First of all, let's consider what a reaction is, and then second of all, let's consider what a reasoning is, because they're polar opposite. When we react, we tend to be emotionally charged, and the two extremes that we typically deal with are fear and greed. Now, if you think back over the most important decisions you've made over your life that had tend not to work out as well as you would have liked, I bet you can find some element of either fear or greed and a less amount of time that was actually given to that decision. In other words, you reacted. Now, on the flip side, reasoning would be indicative of this thoughtfulness, this insight that goes into stopping rather than spewing, thinking rather than absolutely acting out of the concept of rationality. Because when we can reason, we give ourselves room to think, to analyze, to think of different outcomes, because we can't always control outcomes in life, but we can certainly control the activities that we give that are going to lead to that outcome. So we focus on what we can control, and emotions aren't always controllable, particularly when we are reacting, because reactions involve little thought, more action, and more often than time irrational action, whereas reasoning involves more thought and less irrational action. So it's this whole fine line between thinking and acting. And I've had to learn that the hard way more often than not, because I tend to be more of a fire, ready, aim guy. And I've learned the hard way that there is true value that comes in evaluating a situation rather than reacting in the moment. And these are all pointing back to our subject of conversation today, which is yielding. We yield to the important while we surrender the urgent.
And how about some examples in a business setting when it could be just you're interacting with your coworkers or an authority figure, or maybe that there's a big deal out there that you want to close, but you may want to opt to yield because the more important or the payoff is more the long game versus the short game.
Sure. And so let's just consider, any business transaction where it is in the best interest of the buyer. It's in the best interest of the seller to understand the needs of the buyer. And thanks to the World Wide Web, information is at our fingertips. So, Dave, if I'm trying to sell you a widget, and I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you need what I'm selling, your immediate posture towards me is to put a wall up because you don't know me, and in general, people love to buy things, but they hate to be sold. So if I'm trying to sell you something and I absolutely know you need it, rather than going for the kill the first time you and I meet, which would be the reaction, I'm going to yield that which even may produce an immediate result. You could buy from me the very first time we meet. But as me trying to sell you something, I'm going to have a conversation with you that says, Dave, if you and I were to sit down 3 months from now and you had my product in your possession, what would your life look like now that is different than what it would have been before you had my product? In other words, I'm going to give you a chance to tell me the story that my product resulted in immediate success on your part. And as I listen to you speak, resisting my urge to sell, in other words, I'm using my ears, not my mouth, because you are telling me exactly how you want to be sold. So I'm yielding the immediate gratification of the sale while I learn, while I understand what's important to you, because you're telling me how you are going to use my product to benefit your business. I have a greater confidence that the next time we meet, you are going to be more likely to feel good about the purchase that you make rather than me trying to stuff something down your throat. And all I have to do is use what I heard you say to me the first time. Listening is another form of yielding. Speaking is a form of selling, which is, again, something that we do not like to be sold to as human beings, but we absolutely love to buy. So that would be a business application. And I think, as you and I were discussing before we actually jumped on our call today, this situation that you found yourself in with your most recent real estate transaction is that you and your wife found a house that you absolutely wanted. You took the time to do your homework on the sellers. They had a deal in line. For some reason, it fell through. You approached these buyers with full confidence, having done your homework. You made your offer with one small contingency, the fact that it was going to be a couple weeks before you could actually make the offer. Now, they knew they had a house that was in high demand. This was not the only offer that was in place. They very easily could have settled for the immediate and moved to the next offer rather than yielding and waiting for you, which is going to be in another 2 weeks, and it looks like you're going to get that house. Well, that's a perfect example of a human transaction that involved resisting the urgent and yielding for what is the greater gratification that is going to come, and now you're both going to get what it is that you want. Yielding is a wonderful thing if we can simply learn to practice it.
And you just talked about 2 examples there, one with my recent transaction, and the other one about not selling to someone but listening to them. And what popped in my head is, people buy from people, and this is all relationship based. So when you listen and get to know somebody, there's that trust that is built, and a comfort level, because in a lot of these cases, almost all cases, unless it's strictly financial, your home buying experience is emotional, and if you can find that connection, that make all the difference. And Melissa and I have talked about that with our house. Is that I was telling her this is a financial transaction for us, but she has an emotional attachment to the house and wants whoever buys it to take care of it. And I can feel that. And I had a feeling when I talked to the sellers of my new home that they wanted someone who was going to care for, who had interest in it. And I was aware of that, or at least I was genuine, so I wasn't being tactical. I actually had a genuine emotional interest in their house, and they felt that. And I think that's where they felt comfortable in yielding to the immediate, because this house had been on the market a week before they got their first offer, and then soon after that offer fell through, another offer was made. So they definitely could have taken the immediate, and it had paid off. But I feel as though they sold to me because of our connection and my sincere interest.
Well, and the fact that you had done the work in the background to get to a level of knowledge where clearly your research had paid off. Because if you would have just been some stranger on the street, went up, knocked on their door, said, hey, let me make you an offer so we can cut the realtor out, that would be purely a transaction. Whereas, as you mentioned, home buying is a very emotional process. And you proved to them that you cared about the situation at hand, and this was an investment, a significant one, where you and Melissa are going to spend probably the next 30 years of your life together. And I think they picked up on that.
They sure did. And I made sure to mention where my heart was coming from, and my intentions were absolutely good. And I think that's where we find good transactions, whether it's relationship, financial, or otherwise, is that if they recognize someone is listening and caring about them, the rest is easy. The rest of our path to purpose has been laid.
No question. And that's a great point, because in the context of any conversation, you can genuinely tell if someone's listening to what it is you're saying. Just as easily as you, as the listener, can focus in on what is being said rather than resist the distraction of the other thoughts filling your mind. Because as you and I have discussed before, the number one reason we cannot remember people's names is that we simply don't listen. We do not listen because we're too busy thinking about what we're going to say next, which, if you think about it, that's a me first mentality. I'm acting in my own best interest because, God forbid, there should be an awkward silence when I don't know what to say next. So we end up just spewing at one another, and we both walk away. What did he say? I know what I said. And then we live our lives in that trajectory, and it leads to isolation. And it's certainly the opposite of yielding, because it's me first, not you first. And there are only so many exchanges where it's me first before we absolutely burn through everyone that we call a friend, and we become known as the big talker, the insincere, superficial, surface level based conversationalist. And those aren't people we like to be around.
I really like this topic, Bo. It has so many applications, and it's the application of service, which you've punctuated earlier on in this talk. So thank you so much. Today's been all about yielding, and so I will yield to you as you make the close today.
Well, Dave, again, we are rounding the corner here to the conclusion, of our 26-week series. And the path certainly has not been perfect, but it has certainly been on purpose and for a purpose. And the passion is absolutely shared between us. And I just thank you for your brilliant production in making this possible. So with that being said, I am very grateful for you, my good brother, and congratulations on a fantastic future in your new house. That I hope I get the invite to.
Thank you, and it was my honor. Thank you.
Looking for a great at-home sauna at a great price? Get 5% off any indoor or outdoor sauna, cold plunge, or infrared sauna from Almost Heaven with my discount code DAVE, 5% off at checkout. For over 40 years, Almost Heaven Saunas have been trusted as the top American home sauna manufacturer. Almost Heaven Saunas deliver high-quality products and firmly stands behind the holistic benefits the sauna brings to your mind and your body. Again, get 5% off any order with my discount code DAVE, 5% off at almostheaven.com. There's also a direct link below this video.